Seoul, Korea, 1931. While these images may show happy children and people going about their lives, don't let it fool you. After years of conflict with China and Russia, Imperial Japan found itself in possession of new territories. In 1910, they annexed the Korean Peninsula. The Japanese first treated the Koreans respectfully. They called themselves the protectors of the Korean people. Eventually, the Japanese began to take advantage of the Koreans. They cut the wages of Korean farmers, gave Korean land to Japanese businessmen, and they also altered the Korean landscape by cutting down millions of Korean trees and replacing them with Japanese trees. The Japanese also took control of Korea's political system. Japanese politicians were inserted into the Korean government. To further weaken Korea, the Japanese shrank the Korean army and manipulated the currency, which caused hyperinflation. The Japanese also forced their language and education system onto the Koreans, and eventually banned any non-approved books from being taught in the classrooms. The Japanese later sold opium in Korea and often used Koreans to work in the fields and to smuggle the drugs. After the First World War, many Korean politicians declared Korea independent from Japan. Nonviolent protests began, with thousands of Koreans participating in the demonstration. Japan reacted swiftly and killed thousands of protesters and imprisoned hundreds more. Because much of the world was rebuilding after the First World War, Korean protesters did not get much international attention. After this incident, the Japanese took a new route to governing the Koreans. They removed the military governor and declared that Korea was part of the Japanese Empire and were to be treated as Japanese citizens. During the interwar period, the Japanese made education mandatory for all Korean citizens. Education was based on Japanese history and glorification, which once again began to sour relations. Some Koreans were allowed to print newspapers, but these newspapers were heavily censored by the Japanese. 1929 saw more protests, where large amounts of Korean women also joined the march. Similar to the protests in 1919, the demonstrations were put down with force. The interwar period also saw an increase in the amount of rice being produced in Korea. As the Second World War began, up to half of this rice was shipped to Japan. In 1937, Japan launched its invasion of China to further its empire's borders. The Japanese then signed an alliance with the Germans and Italians, which pulled it into the Second World War. The Koreans under Japanese rule were treated very harshly during the Second World War. Koreans were forced to work as laborers, soldiers, and were even victims of human experimentation. The Japanese also subjected thousands of Korean women to forced prostitution. As the Japanese began to lose territory to the United States, their defeat soon became inevitable. On August 15, 1945, the Japanese surrendered, which finally freed the Koreans from 35 years of oppression. Although the Korean peninsula was now independent, they still had far to go before the nation became stable. Rival political views in the north and south of the country would fuel the Korean War in 1950. Although the Japanese occupation of Korea has been over for decades, there are still unpleasant feelings between the two nations, as Japan refuses to acknowledge many of the atrocities of their rule.